Robert Saleh got fired. Crazy upsets in the NFL and college football. Price check is next. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Price Check Sports Podcast, brought to you by the In the Zone Network, where we go city to city, state to state, worldwide. Got a lot of information, a lot of storylines to cover. We are now through week 5 in the NFL season. So we got some takeaways that we want to get into, from what is about the third of the way mark of the NFL season. Got some takeaways we want to get into. But first, the Jets have fired Robert Saleh, ladies and gentlemen. This news came out yesterday. We're recording this on the morning of Wednesday, October 9th. Robert Saleh was relieved of his duties as Jets head coach. A 20-36 overall record as the Jets head coach. As a lot of people kind of hit on yesterday, his defenses in New York, great. They obviously have some talent on that side of the ball. They were, even this year, through 5 games, had only given up, I think, something like 36 overall points in those 5 games. But the offense just never came around, even with Aaron Rodgers here in this season. Now, can make the argument that Aaron Rodgers is not as good as he, once was, and that's part of the reason why the offense has been struggling a little bit. You could also argue that hiring Nathaniel Hackett as the offensive coordinator was, part of the downfall as well. That's Aaron Rodgers' guy. But essentially what it comes down to is Aaron Rodgers, doing his best Alonzo from Training Day impersonation, and essentially saying,
I run shit here. You just live here.
It's pretty much what it was when it comes to Aaron Rodgers and the outcome here for Robert Saleh. I think all signs point to that relationship not necessarily being the best. And, of course, you look at it from the perspective of Woody Johnson, the Jets owner. Can't fire the quarterback at this point. So, got to fire the coach. Defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich is now going to be the interim head coach. I don't really think this is going to change much for the Jets. We'll get into what this means for them next week against the Bills on Monday Night Football. But overall, I think this is still a team that's going to be somewhere around 8-9, 9-8, maybe 10-7 if some things break right. But I think this was going to be kind of the outcome that was destined for them, regardless of if it's Robert Saleh or anybody else at head coach right now, based on how they look so far through 5 games. So, Jets have fired Robert Saleh. We'll see what is next up for them. Now, we'll jump into our takeaways so far through week 5. So, of course, we've seen some teams start out slow. We've seen some unexpected teams start out hot. But here's kind of where, I'm looking at, or here's some of the things that have stuck out so far through 5 weeks. So, starting at number 5. Lack of preseason preparation has really hurt some teams, especially when you look at those first couple weeks of the season. Quarterbacks, of course, we now have a shorter preseason down to 3 games as opposed to 4 because of the extra game in the regular season now. But with that, quarterbacks, as I was getting to here specifically, most of those guys don't play at all during the preseason. You got a lot of starters that may play a couple drives throughout the preseason for the different teams throughout the league, but more and more you're just seeing preseason as a audition for, later round draft picks and, vets that are looking to make different teams. So the lack of preseason reps, I definitely think has hurt. And, of course, has also kind of led to some injuries for guys as well, too. You think about a guy like Jordan Love, played like 3 drives total in the preseason. First game, what happens? He comes in and strains his MCL. So, all of that is not going to be 100%, a direct correlation, but you got to think those lack of reps have, not only started teams out slow in terms of their consistency, their rhythm, but also has gotten some guys injured coming out of the gate as well. So that would be takeaway number 5 for us. Takeaway number 4, underdogs are the real favorites. What do I mean by that? For those of us who bet on the NFL, underdogs have been winning this year at a crazy clip, specifically our bigger underdogs. So you got underdogs that have been or that are underdogs by 6 or more points, 16-2 against the spread. So of the 20 games that we've had favorites by 6 or more points, those favorites have failed to cover 16 times. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. Underdogs of 7.5 or more points, 8-1 against the spread, 7-2 outright. So if you're a underdog of 7.5 or more points, not only are you covering the spread, most times you're winning the game, right? So out of those 9 teams, 7 of the teams have won the game outright. Again, pretty nuts to think about. So when you're looking at betting these different matchups, betting these different outcomes, keep in mind underdogs are going crazy right now. So the teams that seem like they may be a lock, we've got some coming up this week. You got the Texans favored by 7 points against the Patriots. You got the Browns 8.5-point underdogs against the Eagles. At least from the early sample that we have here throughout the season. Those underdogs are not only pretty good at covering the spread, they might just go ahead and win the game straight up. So if you're thinking about taking some of these underdogs against the spread, also sprinkle a little bit on the money line as well, because right now all indications are that that's going to be good money for you. So underdogs are the real favorites. Our fourth takeaway. Takeaway number 3, quarterbacks don't suck. Coaching staffs and franchises do. And why do I say this, right? You look at the guys who are supposed to be generational quarterbacks. Now, you look at a guy like Caleb Williams, for instance. He's still a rookie, kind of, learning the ropes a little bit. But even he is supposed to be a generational guy, got out to a slow start. You look at Trevor Lawrence down in Jacksonville, a guy that we had teams legitimately tanking for, has not proven to be the generational quarterback that we thought he would be. And then on the flip side of this, you got guys like Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, who are on teams number 3 and 4, in some cases, that are not only looking like some of the best quarterbacks in the league, but are leading their teams to some of the best records in the league. So I don't think quarterbacks suck. I think truly coaching staffs are not maximizing the development, not maximizing the skill of these quarterbacks in the way that they should. Sometimes they're just trotting them out and hoping for the best and not providing any real preparation or any real development behind those skills. And so I think this is something to definitely keep an eye out on as we not only progress through this season, but in years to come. What do teams start to do to kind of adjust to this? You're starting to see teams, of course, spend a lot with a good rookie quarterback who's on that rookie deal for 4 to 5 years. They're going out spending, trying to put the best team around them. You also got some teams like Minnesota this year. They use their draft capital, use their cap space in free agency to be able to get a great team around them. They drafted, of course, J.J. McCarthy, but then use a veteran like Sam Darnold to, hey, if he comes in, wins some games for us, great. But if not, we're prepared for the long term as well. So I think you're starting to see teams get a little bit more creative with the quarterback position and kind of how they attack that on a year-to-year basis. Because, again, looking at, quarterbacks coming out of college, they have not been as great as we thought they might be, depending on where they get drafted. So, I don't think quarterbacks suck. I think we're just doing a poor job at coaching those quarterbacks in the league. So, now, takeaway number 2, NFC is up for grabs. We've got, the NFC North looks like the best division in football right now. You got the Lions at 3-1, and have been looking really good the last couple weeks after starting out a little bit slower on offense. Packers have Jordan Love back. Start off a little bit shaky against the Rams this past week, but then right at the ship. The Vikings have the best record in the NFC right now at 5-0. And then you have a Bears team that looks legitimate on defense and is starting to pick it up a little bit offensively. So you got all 4 of those teams who are probably going to be in the mix for the playoffs. But then you got your, Cowboys, 49ers, Eagles, the teams that we thought were going to be kind of the cream of the crop in the conference. 49ers are 2-3. Cowboys are 3-2, but it's a very ugly 3-2. And then you got the Eagles coming off their bye week, in which they went into that bye week getting blown out by the Buccaneers. So it's a lot to think about, a lot to kind of work through in the NFC. But I think, you really have a conference there in the NFC where you could realistically look at all 7 playoff teams having a real shot at not only, making the NFC Championship game, but maybe even making the Super Bowl. So, it'll tie into my final takeaway here shortly, but I think the NFC is up for grabs, and I think we're going to be in for a great playoff race in the NFC. Now, takeaway number 1, we mentioned it coming into the season. We mentioned it last year's playoffs. The Chiefs are inevitable. Just put, Patrick Mahomes in the Thanos costume this Halloween. At this point, they're 5-0. They've played no great games yet. They haven't had a single great performance yet. They're missing Rashee Rice. They're missing Isaiah Pacheco. Guess what? Doesn't matter. Chiefs are inevitable as long as they have Patrick Mahomes. Granted, I'm a little bit hesitant to think of him as the MVP candidate this year just because he hasn't played extremely well. but undefeated to start the season yet again. They're going into their bye week this week, but I think we're starting to kind of see some small similarities. I don't want to compare them to the Tom Brady Patriots just yet because, of course, there's a lot of longevity that comes with what that Patriots dynasty did. But you start to think about what this means historically and kind of what pace they're on. We've already talked about no team in the NFL has ever pulled off a three-peat as Super Bowl champions, putting themselves in position to be able to do that this year. And this Chiefs thing with Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and all those guys around it. It's definitely something special brewing in Kansas City, whether we want to think so or not. I know, of course, a lot of people are going to point to some of the favorable calls and things that they get. Here's the thing. We've seen it across all sports. Your biggest stars, your biggest teams tend to get the calls to break their way. Let's just call it what it is. So those are our 5 takeaways so far through week 5 in the NFL. Now, 3 shout-outs for this week. We're actually staying away from all NFL. We had some guys that we want to give some shout-outs to. Of course, you think about like your Kirk Cousins, who had 500 yards, 4 touchdowns on Thursday Night Football last week. Daniel Jones getting a win for the Giants without Malik Neighbors. Okay, we'll give those guys their shout-out and their just due at a later time. Our 3 shout-outs this week go to 3 college football programs. Those college football programs are University of Arkansas, Vanderbilt, and the University of Washington. Why? Because all 3 of those teams defeated top 10 teams in the country over the weekend. Washington, of course, getting a win at home over Michigan. Vanderbilt defeating Alabama at home, number 1 team in the nation. And then Arkansas pulling off an upset over Tennessee. So shout out to those programs. They all went crazy and celebrating. We love to see it. And for those top 10 teams they beat, of course, hopefully for them they can right the ship and not feel too many more losses now that we're opening up to a 12-team playoff this year. So 3 shout-outs this week, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, and Washington. Shout out to y'all for the big wins over the weekend. Now, looking ahead to week 6 in the NFL. Some pretty fun matchups in this one. Thursday Night Football is a good one this week. 49ers and Seahawks, big NFC West matchup for these 2 teams. Seahawks currently first place in the division right now at 3-2. 49ers struggling a little bit at 2-3. And I think this is a sneaky desperation spot for the 49ers. I don't think this is a team that wants to go to 2-4 on the season. You definitely don't want to do that looking up in the standings at the Seahawks, who would be 4-2 if they were to pull off a win this week. So, given that, taking the 49ers on the road, it'll still be a close game, but I think the 49ers pulled that one out and get a win in Seattle to get back to 500. And then, of course, to tie themselves in first place with the Seahawks. So, Thursday Night Football. Now, Sunday, got a couple different options for what we think the best game of the daytime slate will be. Ravens Commanders is my choice. Of course, you got 2 young black quarterbacks in that one. Young Jaden Daniels, who's been on an MVP type of run here to start this season for the Commanders, getting them to 4-1 and leading the NFC East. Got Jaden Daniels and the Commanders versus Lamar Jackson and the Ravens in Baltimore. A little DMV battle for those folks out east. Give me the Ravens in this one, though. I think the Ravens will, of course, the defense has been shaky for them. They've given up a lot of yards, gave up, 5 touchdowns and a lot of yards to Joe Burrow here this past week. Jamar Chase went off crazy game, 171 yards, 2 touchdowns. But I think that Ravens team is very hard to stop in terms of running the ball. We've seen Derrick Henry just continue to, pound the power running game while you got Lamar Jackson still getting loose and running the ball, being that speed option for them. So I'll take the Ravens. I do think that was going to be a little bit closer. We talked about, the underdogs of 6 or more points. Commanders fit that this week. They're a 6.5-point underdog. So, again, if you want to take a little bit and sprinkle on that spread for Washington, I'm definitely not opposed to it, given how close some of these Ravens games have been, with the exception of that Bills game on Sunday Night Football. So, give me the Ravens in a close one in that one. The other game that we were kind of deciding between on that is Lions-Cowboys in Dallas. I like the Lions in that game coming off the bye week. Dallas just had a pretty tough game in Pittsburgh, late delayed on Sunday Night Football. So rest advantage is in favor of the Lions. So I'm leaning towards the Lions on that one. Just don't love that it is in Dallas. So then Sunday Night Football, you got Bengals and Giants in New York. The Giants got a pretty big win this week without Malik Neighbors, and Daniel Jones looked dare I say it, pretty good. He had, I believe, 250 in the air with 2 touchdowns, no turnovers in that game, even without Malik Neighbors. If Malik Neighbors plays, I think I'm taking the Giants in this one. They're at home. Defense has played fairly well for the most part this season. Offense has just been up and down. But if Daniel Jones looks anything like he looked this past week, we might be okay for the Giants looking out ahead of the rest of the regular season. This Bengals team, the offense has started to pick it up. Been one of the best offenses in football quietly here this season. But that defense is atrocious. I mean, I think 30th in the league in terms of points per game allowed. Bengals defense is definitely not stopping anybody. I think the Giants are live in this one, and give me the Giants in a slight upset pick in that one. And then Monday Night Football, we got Bills and Jets. Bills going to the Meadowlands for this one. Jets, of course, playing their first game without Robert Saleh. Typically, NFL history shows us that the team that fires their coach goes out and has a pretty good performance the following week. Do I think that's going to mean them going on some kind of crazy run for the rest of the season? Maybe not. But I do think the Jets win this game at home. First game without, Robert Saleh with the new-ish coach in there. It's obviously a coach that has already been on that coaching staff. But give me the Jets in that one to beat the Bills. I haven't loved what I've seen from the Bills these last couple weeks. First 3 weeks, they were cooking with gas against some weaker opponents. Last couple weeks, Ravens, Texans, they take 2 hard losses in those. And, that step up in competition for them has not proven to work out in their favor. Big divisional matchup. So I think, looking at it, Jets are probably a little bit more desperate team trying to right that ship after firing their coach. But give me the Jets in that one. Probably a field goal game. It's probably going to be 23-20, something like that. But I think the Jets pull that out and kind of have that, new head coach bump, so to speak. So now our betting picks lose yet again. We were right there. Jets, of course, had the ball with a chance to not only tie, but maybe even go ahead with the extra point in late in the fourth quarter in London against the Vikings. Aaron Rodgers throws a pick on that final drive and killed that one. And then, of course, the Saints had no chance against the Chiefs. So tried to go outside the box with the underdog pick, and it turns out we picked the wrong underdogs. So there's that for last week. Let's try to get the ship right. We're going to stick with one game this week, and we're actually going to go with the game that is closest to us, Thursday Night Football. Going to go with the same game parlay for the Thursday Night Football game, plus 236 on FanDuel. We're looking at Brock Purdy, 225 or more passing yards. We're taking DK Metcalf over 66.5 receiving yards. And we're going to take Jordan Mason, 60 or more rushing yards for the San Francisco 49ers. Again, that parlay gets you plus 236 odds on FanDuel. So, it's our betting picks for this upcoming week 6. That'll do it for our show this week. Stay locked in with us. Stay tuned. Got some good things coming here on the Price Check YouTube channel. And we also are going to be a guest on the Right Quality podcast here. We'll, of course, drop some snippets of that on the channel as well when it's ready. But join them to talk NBA because, of course, NBA season is almost here. Preseason has started. Also, before we go, major shout out to the New York Liberty and Minnesota Lynx for solidifying their spots in the WNBA Finals. Going to be an amazing series. I think I'm going to pick the Liberty in that one. Breanna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, Jonquel Jones, that trio, outstanding. I think they finish it off and get themselves a ring in New York. And then also make sure, Netflix, they got the starting 5 doc up for the NBA. Definitely going to be tuned in that. May even give a little bit of a recap or some reactions to that here on the channel as well. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Josh Price. Check it out.